All right, so the purpose of this video is really to think about some of the things that we talked about in class today. And so in geometry, you really worked with similar triangles, and proportions are super duper related to similar triangles because all similar triangles are proportional, meaning that all I need to do is multiply each side by the same amount and I get the same numbers. So we can talk a little bit more about that. But really, what we want you to be able to do is know that there are similar triangles, and we can think about how to find different parts when we know that they're related in this very specific way using proportions. And so, if I think about this small triangle, and I know that they're similar, and I think about this larger triangle, I needed to just multiply by something, but I don't know what that thing is. And so a tool that we know is we know that with things that are proportional, if I relate one side, like the height, to the base side, that proportion is going to be the same as the proportion, the fraction, if I take this amount and divide it by this amount. There's actually a lot of ways to think about proportions. I'm just proposing one of those ways. So I'm going to think 5 is related to 4 in the same way that h is related to 60. Now when I go and solve this thing, I want you to think about this not as a fraction, but think about it as 5 divided by 4, or h divided by 60. Because when you think about it as a fraction, it actually makes it much more easy to think about. Because I know to undo division is multiplication. So I have to multiply by 4. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so I multiply by 4. Now I'm not going to simplify this right away because I want you to see how they relate. So the 4's cancel out. We're left with that 5 equals, and then it's 4 times h, the h that was there, over 60. So I'm not combining anything. I'm not simplifying anything yet. We could also do the same thing by saying, oh, 4h is divided by 60. Well, I want to get rid of the 60 on the fraction. I want to get rid of this fraction, so I'm going to just multiply by 60. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. 60. And I hope that you see that it's 60 times 5 is equal to 4 times h. Right? Because that 60 part, those canceled out. And this is a much easier problem to solve because to finish this up, all I need to do to get h by itself is to divide by 4. And I can pop this into a calculator, the 4's cancel out, and this all equals h. So 60 times 5 divided by 4 ends up being 75. So this ends up being 75, and I think 75. So 75 equals h, which means for this triangle, the h has to be 75. And we know that that's true because if I were to plug it back in, these two fractions are equal to each other. 5 divided by 4 is the same as 75 divided by 60. So we want to think about the same type of problem again, but in a context, and we talked about this in class. And so we can compare two objects. If we know that this person's height, who's a six foot person, casts a 20-foot shadow, we can think about how tall a tree is by comparing its shadow. So previously we compared the height to the base. Well, we could also compare the height to the height and the shadow to the shadow. And I'm going to do that here. So this is just another iteration or another way to think about it. So I'm thinking about 6 over question mark is equivalent to 20 over 90. Well, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to multiply by 90. I'm going to multiply by 90, so I get 6 times 90 over some unknown value equals, the 90's cancel out, I'm left with 20. And to get rid of the question mark, well, we're 6 times 90 divided by question mark, we're going to multiply by that unknown value. We're going to just multiply by the unknown value. The unknown values cancel out. I mean, we could think of that as an x. So I'm going to just move my work up. So I think about 6 times 90 equals 20 times some unknown values, times question mark. And then to simplify, to finish, divide by 20, I say question mark is equal to whatever 60 times, or excuse me, 6 times 90 divided by 20 is. So it looks like question mark equals 27. So we know that the height of this tree is 27 feet. So in algebra, we think about slope actually as a proportion. The slope is the rise over the run. It's the proportion of how much it goes up by how much it goes over. So if I'm looking at this, I'm going to pick a couple points. I think, okay, there's a nice point and there's a nice point. Well, I now have this slope triangle, and I think, oh, it went from -2 to 2, so that's rise is 4, and it goes from 0 to 3, so run is 3. So we could think about it as the proportion of 4 over 3. But I hope that you know that if I wanted to keep going, I could, if I went up another 4, I'd have to go out some amount. And if we double the amount that we go up, we're actually going to double the amount we go out. So not only are we going to go over 3, we're going to go over 6 because we've doubled the amount. And so this proportion, the rise over run, is also equivalent to any multiple of it. So if I double it, so 4 times 2 is 8, 3 times 2 is 6. Or we could go to any quantity. We could say, oh, 30, we multiplied by 10 is equivalent to 4. So if I go up 40 units, I'm going to go over 30 units. So they're just proportional. Well, we want to think, okay, so what if you had a run of 15? Well, we know that 4 over 3 is going to be equivalent to the rise, so some unknown rise, to 15. Well, there's a couple ways of doing it, and I recommend you do it the way that we did it earlier, where we're multiplying by the denominator, but you could also see that we've just multiplied everything by 5, so that's an option too. But I'm going to promote the way that we've talked about earlier in this video, so I'm going to multiply by 3, those cancel out, so I'm left with 4 equals 3x over 15. I'm going to multiply by 15, and I'm going to say, oh, that's 60 equals 3x. And so 3x equals 60, divide by 3, x equals 20. And so if I had a run of 15, the rise would be 20. I hope this is starting to make sense. We're just solving, but we're doing it by undoing multiplication. So here are a few more just generic problems that you'll see. I'm going to give you a moment to please pause the video, try these 2 problems out, and we'll check in with you in just a moment. The answers are going to magically appear. All right, so these proportions are a little bit more tricky, and so I want to talk about them very special in the first place, because we have to think about everything that's being added or multiplied kind of as its own group. And so I like to start by putting parentheses around them, just so that I remember that they're a group in and of themselves. And so we'll start with this one. I'm going to get rid of the 9, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 9. And I'm left with 4 equals 9 times r plus 3, all of that over 45, and then I have to multiply by 45. So the hard part here is getting rid of this stuff. So 4 times 45 is 180. So 180 equals 9 times r plus 3. Well, this is now a relatively straightforward problem where we need to distribute and simplify. So I got 180 equals 9r plus 27, and then I'm going to subtract. So this is going back to that solving piece. 153 equals 9r, divide by 9. I get 17 equals r. So really the hard part here is to think about the addition as a group. You can do the same thing here. In fact, I'm going to have you pause the video to try this one out. All right, I hope this video was helpful to you. The goal is really to think about proportions and solving them. They'll be useful coming down the line. So thanks so much for watching.